Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, Rover Turbo. In this video we're going to be doing a bit of a investigation slash repair tryout on this Audi A4. Now it's coming up with a P2002 error code, engine management light on, and that's a particulate trap performance, I think is the code. So what that basically means is it thinks the DPF is blocked. Okay, now this is a 2004 Audi A4 with a 2-litre TDI. Basically, the normal methods of cleaning out the DPF on these is not as simple as it sounds because of the EGR system. There are a lot of videos online about you can spray in the cleaning fluid into various bits and pieces, and some of them say that you have to take the EGR cooler out and replace it because it gets blocked up. Now let me actually show you what I'm doing and what I'm going to do and see whether it actually is going to solve the problem, doing it a kind of a quicker way than taking the whole car apart. Right, so it's an Audi A4 Estate Ultra, they call it. It's got about 121,000 miles on it. Now this is the turbo. I think this is like a pre-cat or a cat or pre-DPF. I don't really know exactly what this is. And then it kind of goes down here and then it goes into this. This is the actual DPF, and then this is the exhaust, I believe. And then down here, I think this is the EGR cooler, which bolts into the back of the cat. The DPF. So, and this I believe is the AdBlue injector, because this has got AdBlue in it. Now AdBlue, as we all know, if we're aware of these systems, is they can sort of crystallize and go, they can block. So this is the injector. It injects AdBlue into the system, which helps cleaner emissions basically. The problem with the AdBlue is it's kind of getting mixed up inside the DPF with all of the soot, and it's crystallizing inside the EGR cooler. And these systems, the EGR cooler goes into the actual DPF itself. It's not a separate system with a pipe. So what's happening is when it goes in, it goes into the EGR system when it's bypassing the exhaust. I think there's a valve in the exhaust that closes, and it's sending all of the gases down the EGR through the EGR cooler and then back into the system. Now if the EGR cooler is blocked, it thinks, because there's a restriction, it thinks the DPF is blocked, where it's not necessarily the case. So at the moment the engine management light on, it drives fine, but I don't know whether it's not doing regenerations, therefore it's getting blocked up. So various videos online, you can buy DPF cleaning fluid, which I guess if I was going to recommend, I'd say buy that. But I'm going to use something else, and I'm going to try it, and we're going to see what happens. I need to basically get some of this stuff into this DPF and cooler and let it sit for as long as I possibly can without it actually drying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect this. Anyway, sorry, let me just go back a little bit. To get to this stage, it's very easy. There is a plastic cover which sits over here with some little plastic poppers that just go in. Unfortunately with these ones, they have a pin in the middle that you have to push down. Hopefully they don't fall out, and then you can pop these out with a trim tool. You won't get them out unless you push that pin out. Try not to push the pin all the way through, just enough where you can pop them out and not lose the pin. And then this clips into this front edge with like little plastic clips. You just have to kind of like tease it and it pops out. The engine cover is just on top of there with little like rubber dongers. Underneath this plastic panel is this bit, which screws down into there with a couple of T25 screws, one there, and that goes into the air box. You take those two screws out after you've taken that panel off. That just unclips there's a little plastic sort of thing that goes into the airbox. There, you have to take that out, and then the airbox then just pushes into here. It goes into these clips, and then you've got a tube which goes into the inlet here. It's a 6mm Jubilee clip. Undo that, and then it will just pop out, and then that will get you to where we are here now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out this, which I think is a T30, take out this injector, check it's not blocked, clean it out with a bit of water. I think you can do it with, and then I'm going to put some of my liquid down inside this hole, and then I'm also going to see if I can undo this, because I believe this is a tube for the pressure sensor. And then I'm going to I'm going to spray some of my liquid in there, and this hopefully will fill this entire chamber up, and also the EGR cooler with the stuff. I don't know if there's any other way I can get actually some liquid into the actual cooler itself. So what I'm going to use is Mr. Muscle oven cleaner. Now, you may laugh, and you can click off this video at this point if you want to, but this makes total sense. I've used this before, and I've had great results with it. Not on this particular application, but cleaning out DPF's EGR coolers with brilliant results. Now, if you think about it, what does this do? Oven cleaner. It cleans off burnt off oil inside your oven. And that's basically what is inside. The ash content is leftover burnt off soot. Now, obviously, you've got all your fats and stuff inside your oven, and you're heating it at 200 and 250 degrees C, and you get all those crusty, carbony coke deposits all over the inside of your oven. And obviously, this is foam. It sits, it soaks, and then it washes off with water. Now, spraying this inside here, filling it up, using a tin of this. I'll happily use a tin of this, because I think it's £5 a tin. I think I got that whole lot for 20 quid or something, I can't remember, off of Amazon. The hardest bit is actually getting that in there, which is where these special applicators that you can buy with these DPF cleaners do trump this. But I believe that this stuff is better than the liquid that you put inside. So if it works, obviously this is going to be a long-term thing that I'm going to have to spray in. I'll show you the steps, what I do, and then obviously we'll have to clear the codes, drive the car, and then wait, however long, 500 miles, whatever, to see whether that code comes back. Because if it does, then I need to obviously do it again, or I need to take the EGR cooler off. Okay, so progress update is I've taken this off. It was a T30. It goes through this little clamp. It didn't like coming out. I had to use some WD-40 and backwards and forward, and it has sort of slightly damaged that, so I don't know if I'm going to find a new bolt. It doesn't look too bad on camera actually. And I've sprayed, I don't know, a third of a can in there until it started to overflow. So I just stuck that back on to stop it all flowing back out again. And in the meantime, I've taken this out here. I've had to give this a few attempts because this pipe has no give in it. I don't know where this goes. I can't work out. There's so many pipes that go around the back here. I don't know where that goes to, because there's looks like two pressure sensors here, and one of them doesn't actually go to anything. And this, I think, this one goes down, I think, along here, down, and it goes down to the bottom of the front of the DPF, I think, which is kind of irrelevant. Anyway, so it's a 17mm nut. I had to put a bit of WD-40 on it and work it, because these exhaust type fittings, the sensors and stuff, they tend to bind up. So don't just keep going, you'll ruin the thread. So just loosen it, tighten it, WD-40, loosen it, tighten it. Anyway, so this I did manage to literally manhandle to pull out, because you can see how far that goes inside there, and there's no give on this pipe, so you can stretch it. So I'm going to spray, put the nozzle in there, and then literally just sort of hold it on there and spray as much as I can in there. Now there are theories, I don't quite know how I'm going to do this yet, about running the engine so the exhaust gases are pushing the fluid through. Obviously if the EGR is opening and closing, the EGR cooler is opening and closing, that's going to be pushing this through the EGR cooler, because if it's not, if the EGR cooler isn't actually active and opening and closing, it's not going to push any of this through the EGR cooler. If it's possible, it can push it through the cooler. So obviously to run it, you would need to temporarily connect the MAF sensor and the tube. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to spray as much as I can in there, which I've done anyway, leave it for half an hour while I have some lunch, come back, maybe spray a bit more in, maybe push some through with the air, leave it for another 10-15 minutes, and then maybe run the engine. But I'll keep you updated. Right, so I've left it about 40 minutes while I had some lunch, and then I've taken that off again, and I've literally filled that up again. So what I've done is I've just put this back in place, and I've just put a weight on top just to push down, because the foam tends to sort of expand out, and the same down here. So I've literally just put a Torx socket in there, and then literally just jammed it up against this nut so it's pushing in it, because it just tends to sort of expand out of the hole. So I've used a complete can, one can of that, basically in there and in there. So again, I'm going to leave it again for another half an hour. The longer, yes, I know that does attack aluminium, blah blah blah, it's not going to dissolve it. Leave it again for another half an hour. The longer I leave that in there, expanding around, going inside, as I've said earlier, I literally gave it another dose in and left it sitting for another 30 minutes or so. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give it one last spray in there and in there. You can see I've started there, and then I'm going to put it back together. So I'm going to clamp that back on, put that pipe back on. I'm going to loosely put this back in, and then I'm going to take it for a drive. I'm not really in a position here where I want to rev it, sit there for 30 minutes with it revving. You know, I don't want to annoy the neighbours. I just thought I'd do a little update on this, because it's been a couple of weeks later than the last clip that you saw. So I put it all back together after doing what I did, cleared the code, took it for a drive, and I had the diagnostic with me, and it threw the code pretty much immediately, but didn't put the light on. I could kind of feel the car hiccup, and then I checked the codes, and there was a code there, but the light didn't come on. So obviously it puts the code on, and then obviously if it continues to be a problem, it will put the light on. It depends on the fault. Some cars do that. So I kept clearing it, kept driving it, it kept popping up, I kept clearing it, it kept popping up, I kept clearing it live as I was driving. Then it didn't come back, and I drove it a few miles, 30, 40, 50 miles. It started to do a regen, which I've never known it do before. It started to do a regen, that went fine. Then I drove it around a bit more, got in it the next day, and then a few miles down the road, the light popped up again. I've cleared the light, it drove it for another 30, 40 miles, and then the light came back on again. So what I'm going to do is I used about a can and a half of this, and I'm going to put some more in there, I'm also going to add a little bit of water as well to kind of try and help force it along. But we're going to keep doing this. I'm going to give it another dose, leave it to sit, do exactly what I did before, but just do it again and add a little bit of water this time, let it sit. Right, so I've been filling it up from there and there, pouring a little bit of water in, and pretty much now this is completely full up now. So literally I'm just going to pop that on, because it does tend to expand out of the hole. Make sure that's clipped on properly. And then I've just found a little plastic bung that fits in there perfectly. It's like a little trim clip. I'm spraying it in there till it's starting to come out, and I'm putting a bung in and then waiting a bit more, putting the bung in. I just want to get it up because this is actually, I'm pretty sure this is the EGR cooler here, so this is the best place to put it to actually get it to go into the actual EGR cooler. Another thing I need to add is you probably want to make sure that you're rinsing any of the Mr. Muscle off of any any plastics. You don't want to leave it on the outside, because if you leave it there it will stain, and you don't want it eating into any plastics or reacting to anything inside the engine bay. So just make sure you give it a good rinse off. Don't get it on your hands, make sure you rinse it off your hands, and just be careful with it basically. Right, okay, it's the next day, so I've literally just pop that on there, left that plug in there, so I've got to clear the code and then start it up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it run, I'm going to let it warm up, and then while it's running, because I've left this bung in here, I'm going to spray as it's running some more Mr. Muscle into there because I'm hoping that once it warms up a bit and the EGR and the cooler starts opening up, it's going to start pushing some of that fluid through the actual cooler itself. Because at the moment I don't know how much of that has actually gone through the EGR cooler. So the engine's running now, and you can see obviously this has gone right through the exhaust. So it's not the DPF cleaning that's the difficult bit. It's the EGR cooler. Little update: you can't spray anything in there while the engine's running. It pushes. There's air coming out of there, or exhaust gases coming out of there, so you can't do that while the engine's running. So the only way you can do it is to take this out, which allows the exhaust fumes to come out of here. Then you can spray in here with the engine running, which is what I did. Then I switched it off, and then I sprayed the rest of the can in there in intervals, and then put the plug back in. So I've gone through probably in total 2 cans. So I think I've done 1.5 cans the first time I did it a few weeks ago, and then I used another 1.5 cans this time. Also what I've done is I've just cut this stub down just a little bit, because this is the sealing piece here and this is just excess which goes inside. It's really difficult to get this in and out. Now bearing in mind I might have to do this again, wish I'd done that the first time, so that hopefully should go in there easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back in, tighten it up, put the air filter back on properly, because at the moment it is on there, this is still plugged in. So I'm going to put that back, and I'm going to go and take it for a drive, a good 10, 15, 20 minute drive. Right, so back in the Audi, I've driven it for I don't know, about 20 minutes. Tried to keep it in as low gear as possible, in second when I should have been in third, in third when I should have been in fourth, to keep the revs up. It was smoking a bit, not a lot. I took it for a drive for a good 20 minutes. Everything sort of seems to be good, no codes, no engine management light. So what I need to do obviously is drive it again for 50, 60, 100 miles, whatever. And at the end of this video, obviously I'll update whether it's worked or not. So if you're watching this video, it worked, because obviously I'm not going to post it if it didn't work, but I will update whether it did.